What if one fiery speech could shatter alliances and leave a world leader exposed on the global stage? Just 5 minutes ago in Budapest, Ukraine's president stormed into a high-stakes summit, desperate to derail a secret huddle between two titans, Russia's Putin and America's Trump. But what unfolded wasn't diplomacy, it was a brutal verbal showdown that humiliated him before the world's eyes. Viktor Orban's icy retort turned the room into a graveyard of shattered egos. Could one man's words really topple a nation's hopes? Stick around, the twist will leave you breathless. Zelensky stepped into the grand hall, his heart pounding like distant thunder. Nerves flickered beneath his actor's poise. He'd rehearsed this moment 100 times in dimly lit rooms, yet doubt gnawed at him. His deep navy suit clung like forged steel, a shield against the invisible arrows awaiting him. No trenches here, no foxholes, just the raw glare of judgment. His steel-gray eyes scanned for friendly faces, scanning for escape routes amid the turmoil churning inside. The chamber hummed with restrained energy, vast yet suffocating under the chill of overhead lights. Polished oak panels gleamed, walls whispered of forgotten pacts, and the air carried a faint, sterile scent of polished brass. Delegates sat frozen, breaths shallow, no one daring to shuffle toward the doors. All eyes locked on the unfolding drama, the weight of history pressing down like an unseen fog. Taut silence gripped the seats, tension coiling like smoke between armrests. Fingers drummed softly on leather, eyes darted to glowing screens. One delegate merely stared, lost in the swirl. Before him on the table, a simple plaque, Ukraine. It stood like a sentinel, etched in cold metal. He pressed his palm flat against the wood, index finger tapping, a theater signal for focus, sharp as a drawn blade. His voice cut through, not booming, but edged like honed glass. Today, we assemble once more in this city. What name echoes like a betrayer's whisper? The words hung measured, tone flat yet piercing, drawn low as if scraped from shadowed depths. This spot, where Ukraine was vowed eternal safety. Where ink met paper in deals that crumbled like dust. The memorandum. It rolls off the tongue like a vow, almost poetic. A ripple stirred, few delegates shifted gazes, one uncapped a water bottle with a soft click. But Zelensky pressed on, unyielding. Today, whispers of another gathering swirl. Unofficial. Perhaps chance-born. Between two figures who dream of carving the globe anew, here. Again. Silence stretched, thick as velvet curtains. The crowd leaned in, fabrics rustling faintly. Putin and Trump. That clash, it must not ignite. Ukraine fights tooth and nail to stop it becoming a feast of deals diced from Europe's flanks. We refuse to be sidelined. No talks without our voice. Papers? Mere whispers. Deeds alone ring true. He sank into his seat, the echo of his words fading into heavy quiet. His pulse thrummed in his ears, the microphone hummed alive. In that suspended hush, timing sharpened like a predator's gaze. Viktor Orban rose then, his tone velvet over ice, cool as fresh-forged steel. No flourishes. No peaks. Just steady command. From a man whose words always command the room. Mr. Zelensky. A pause, weighted like lead. Your address stirs the heart. Overly so. You indict this city. You decry a summit yet to breathe. And most curiously, you blame the memorandum. One you claim bound us all. He lingered in the void, pinning Zelensky as if sharing a private jest with the hall. A soft chuckle rippled from corners, or was it imagined? Allow me a modest perspective. The memorandum? No pact of iron. No shield unbreakable. Just a diplomatic feint, laced with regret. Build your realm's stance, forsaking your own foundations as sacred law. Small wonder isolation found you swift. The quiet shifted, analytical now, crisp as autumn frost. As if every soul there glimpsed tomorrow's headlines etched in stone. You resist Russia's shadow. Orban pressed, smile absent, eyes unblinking. Your choice, utterly. But dare you thrive bereft of its fuels? Its trade winds? Without allies forbearance holding firm? We honor strength. Not the clamor of the fallen, voices raised in vain. He eased back, fingers steepled, face a mask of serene triumph. He'd claimed victory in mere timbre alone. Zelensky held still, lips sealed tight, thoughts slicing inward like jagged shards. One rash twitch, and the facade he'd woven so meticulously could fracture. Delegates watched, breaths held. A murmur of claps broke, subtle at first, then swelling, not for show but raw signal. Orban's edge had landed first. For Zelensky, the chamber blurred to white-hot focus. Yet he drew on old stagecraft, reclining with feigned ease. Let's grant. Perhaps a touch of haste. The lull dragged, air thickening to near snap. When endurance teetered on the brink, he ignited anew, words clenched like rare gems. You speak of might, Mr. Orban. But might born of yielding, breeds tyranny's grip. Does it not? The hall stirred, nods, but wary. His riposte gleamed poetic, yet lacked thunder. Thus ended the opening salvos. Yet the true storm brewed, flames licking hidden drafts, poised to erupt beyond control. Orban's gaze slid away, ignoring Ukraine's bench entirely. He fixed on a crystal decanter, liquid glinting like trapped stars, the quiet pooling deeper. It felt scripted, honed like a warrior's stance before the clash, repeated endlessly in shadowed prep. Mr. President. No lift in address, voice level. You're bid to breach that summit, bold indeed. Especially when you're no longer at the board, but a mere piece moved by others. The phrase detonated softly, like spilled mercury across marble. Chairs creaked as delegates fidgeted, the Chinese envoy murmured low to an aide, ink-scratching paper. The Indian sat entranced, as if ensnared by an unfolding saga. Zelensky surged forward, ire flaring at such barbs, unanswerable, yet wounding deep. He braced for counter, but Orban flowed onward, relentless. They omitted you from that parley, for your presence adds no weight. Ukraine today? No pivot of power. Merely a sideshow in grander games. Forgive the edge, if it bites. But candor suits you, does it not? The lines carved precise, bloodless yet aching. Whispers stirred in Ukraine's ranks, a stifled gasp, perhaps. Zelensky bit back retort, too soon meant frailty exposed. Then, the Russian envoy claimed the floor. Tall, broad, in slate-gray wool that spoke of unyielding stone. No flare adorned him, no pin, no flourish. Just a thick band on his thumb, twisting as he built his case. Fascinating. A faint curve to his lips. In this arena, tongues mingled, Russian laced English, roots blurred by time. No one cared to trace origins now. He kept level, almost droning, like a scholar unveiling truths to a class prepped for the verdict. Budapest Memorandum, born of naive politics. Lacking any binding chain. No tribunal worldwide honors it as cornerstone. A bid to conjure security from thin air. Illusion, that's the heart. A Scandinavian delegate snorted softly, another jotted furiously, pen whispering across pages. The room awakened, pulses quickening with the scent of conflict's spice. And yet, you fault us for guarding phantoms? At best, illogical. The Dutch interjected, voice tentative. So Russia pledged, then faltered? Laughter echoed from Russian seats, light but pointed. I concede Ukraine recast solemn vows, as armed revolt. But if history grips you tight, recall who first rent that fabric. A breath held, silence taut as bowstring. When Kiev's unrest chased foes to our borders. When fear twisted the tale, reshaping a nation's arc in frantic script last decade. When you bartered remembrance like wares at bazaar, that's when fractures bloomed. Air grew heavy, dough-like, almost chewable. A violin strain drifted from afar, haunting, unbidden. The break turned theater, pulse racing. Still. I pivot to Zelensky's core claim, and Hungary sway beneath its weight. Eyes lifted, serene as pond surface, yet depths hid tempests unknown. You jest, truly, that a land once defiant gainst Brussels' pull, now boast to Moscow's ear? No, Mr. Zelensky. We heed Budapest alone. Our Budapest. The chamber crackled, hands gripped edges, mics adjusted with faint whirs. No voices rose. Just the hush of strategy unfolding. It dawned on Zelensky, he wasn't playing the game, he was the pawn encircled. His oratory? Echoed unheard. But retreat? Unthinkable. Pivot time. He leaned in, shedding drama for stark resolve, born not of rage, but calculated shift. Then, let's speak plain. In a pivotal gathering echoing through the chambers of history, the air shimmered with tension. Two leaders faced off, their stakes higher than ever. What will happen when the weight of promises collides with the bitter truth of betrayal? Today, we find ourselves once again in a city that holds the weight of unfulfilled commitments. A place where vows were exchanged like currency, yet they hold as much value as discarded papers. The infamous memorandum stood as a symbol, a promise almost too beautiful to be real. Yet, here we were. A handful of delegates shifted uneasily, a few tapping fingers against tables, others fidgeting with their water bottles. Zelensky, undeterred, kept his composure. He addressed the assembly, hints of urgency lacing his voice. A new, unofficial meeting loomed in the shadows of this gathering, one that could reshape narratives. Two formidable figures awaited in the periphery, Putin and Trump. A rendezvous that some believed should never take place. The Ukrainians fought fiercely to prevent this meeting from becoming a spectacle of political theater, an event devoid of their input. His mind raced through potential outcomes, his heart pounding with each moment he spoke. "We reject empty assurances," he declared, the timbre of his voice rising with conviction. "We stand for action, not mere words." The microphone crackled as he made his plea, the room hanging on his every syllable. Then came Viktor Orban, his demeanor as steel-like as the cold metal that formed his tone. "Mr. Zelensky," he began, his voice slicing through the air with a chilling calmness. "Your outburst is merely theater. You accuse us of treachery yet fail to recognize your own delusions." His gaze fixed on Zelensky, eyes glinting with disinterest, yet he forged ahead. "Memorandums are not guarantees. They are mere whispers in the wind, forgotten quickly." Zelensky fell silent, grappling with the sting of Orban's words. The atmosphere crackled, like electricity before a storm. This was not just a debate, it felt like a desperate fight for survival, each man grappling with the specter of their political destinies. Orban smirked, his confidence growing. The audience seemed to hold their breath as the tension intensified, everyone anticipating the next move in this high-stakes game. Could Zelensky overcome Orban's verbal onslaught? The stage was set for an epic showdown, and as the silence deepened, it was clear, this was only the beginning. Viktor Orban, the Hungarian Prime Minister, leaned back in his chair, his fingers drumming lightly on the polished mahogany table. The room's chill air seemed to thicken with unspoken disdain. "You claim you don't want to bow to Russia's dominance," Orban stated without a flicker of emotion. "That's your choice. But are you prepared to sever ties with its vast resources? Its sprawling markets? Its patient alliances?" A faint, scornful smirk tugged at his lips. "We respect strength. But dictatorships? They only whine louder in defeat." He slammed back against the leather upholstery, exuding the quiet triumph of a man who'd just claimed the board. The tactile click of the chair against the floor echoed sharply. Could this Hungarian hardliner really dismantle Volodymyr Zelensky's resolve with a single barb? What skeleton lurked in Zelensky's closet, ready to shatter the icy composure? Silent fury crested within Zelensky like a storm wave crashing unseen shores. His lips pressed into a taut line, each internal retort sharpening like shattered glass. Yet he recognized the peril, a single ill-judged twitch could shatter the invulnerable facade he'd meticulously crafted. Eyes darted across the delegates, some applauding softly in stunned ripples, not a roar, but a telling murmur. It pitted Orban's icy dominance against Zelensky's whitening visage. He drew upon lessons from countless cameras, slumping into a facade of indolent competence. The hush stretched unbearable, until— "You speak of fragile dictatorships, Prime Minister Orban. But dictatorships crumble swiftly." His voice emerged clenched. Each syllable gritted out. Hallies erupted in murmurs, impressive, yet unalarmed. Their verbal spar concluded, but the true battle ignited below. Tension simmered like embers beneath a veneer of calm, luring toward shadowy intrigues veiled from official records. No treaty bound this intrigue, merely silence propelling toward another chamber. Chess-like, whites had advanced too hastily, blacks now lingered, eroding vantages with deliberate force, thwarting inevitable advances. Orban averted his gaze from Zelensky entirely, ignoring the Ukrainian cadre. Instead, his eyes fixed on the wall, glass decanters shimmering, the floor beneath muted and stifling quiet. His tone even, rehearsed 1,000-fold. "President Zelensky," he murmured, head unraised. "Your push to infiltrate the summit? Audacious. But when you're no longer a king, merely a pawn." Gasps rippled like spilled wine across crystal glasses. Delegates shifted uneasily, the Chinese envoy whispering fervently to an aide, the Indian diplomat leaning in with rapt intrigue. Zelensky leaned forward, repelled by words that stung but defied direct counter. He braced for combat, but Orban pressed on relentlessly. "You weren't invited because your presence lacks value. Ukraine holds no regional sway today. You've fragmented into political chaos. Harsh truth, but you prize candor, don't you?" Each accusation sliced like a blade, bloodless yet agonizing, evoking muffled distress in the Ukrainian ranks. Would Zelensky fold under this unrelenting assault, or unleash a gambit that flips the script entirely? What if the ghosts of old alliances could shatter a leader's dreams in one brutal exchange? In Budapest's tense halls, Zelensky's bold intrusion into a secret Putin-Trump summit backfires spectacularly, as Orban's icy retorts and Russian barbs expose Ukraine's fragile past, leaving delegates stunned and alliances fracturing before our eyes. 347 characters, from the heated clash where Orban dismantled Zelensky's emotional plea with surgical precision, labeling it mere diplomatic theater and mocking Ukraine's isolation, the room hung on every word. Now the Russian voice rises, turning history into a weapon that could redefine the entire debate. The Russian delegate leaned forward, his broad frame casting a shadow over the polished table, the faint scent of aged wood and whispered secrets filling the air. He spoke with measured calm, each syllable like a hammer striking cold steel. "We poured our sweat into your lands," he began, voice steady, echoing softly off the high ceilings. Factories rose in Kharkiv's dusty plains, roaring with life, shaping metal into dreams. Metallurgy bloomed in Donbass, flames dancing in furnaces that lit the night sky. Rockets soared from Baikonur's launch pads, piercing the stars we shared. A murmur rippled through the delegates, chairs creaking under shifting weight, the air thick with unspoken regrets. He paused, eyes scanning the room like a strategist plotting moves on an invisible board. "We handed Ukraine chances we never claimed for ourselves, cities sculpted in stone and steel, what you now brand as chains of occupation." His tone sharpened. A subtle edge that made Zelensky's jaw tighten, fingers drumming faintly on the table's smooth surface. "Go ahead then," he continued, no triumph in his posture, just quiet resolve, as if reciting facts from a long-forgotten ledger. "Tear down your own foundations, but without those echoes of unity, what remains? Empty slogans drifting in the wind?" He settled back, unmoved, like a professor unveiling a flawed equation, knowing the class would grapple with its truth. Zelensky surged ahead slightly, his easy smile vanishing, eyes narrowing with a pulse of restrained fury, veins throbbing like a hidden metronome beneath his skin. He opened his mouth to fire back, words forming on his lips, but then a new voice cut through, unbidden and sharp. It belonged to the Belarusian delegate, his face etched with the weight of shared borders. "I grew up in those very streets," he said, gaze fixed on the Ukrainian side, the room's hush amplifying his steady breath. "In the heart of what was once our republic, every neighborhood pulsed with schools, hospitals, libraries, built strong, for all." He glanced toward the far wall, where flags hung limp in the still air, their colors faded like old promises. "Today, I walk Ukraine's cities, and see the scars on those same schools, those factories turned to rubble. You call it freedom's price. I name it irreplaceable loss." The words landed heavy, stirring a low hum from the Slavs in the room, no fanfare, just raw simplicity that gripped like frost on glass. The tension coiled tighter, delegates scribbling notes or exchanging glances. The faint rustle of paper mixing with the room's cool draft. "The union wasn't flawless," he pressed on, voice even but insistent. "Far from it, tangled in flaws we all endured. But erasing it to seize control of your fate. As you witness now, that grip slips fast." It wasn't a shout, diplomatic, clipped, yet it echoed like thunder in the silence, waves of nods and uneasy shifts rippling outward. Someone jotted furiously, another stifled a cough, a chair scraped softly against the floor, but beneath it all, Zelensky's mind raced. How deep would these old wounds cut before the summit shattered entirely? Just 5 minutes ago, in the heart of Budapest, tensions erupted in a diplomatic showdown spanning a week. Zelensky clashed with world leaders over a clandestine Putin-Trump meeting, only to face brutal public backlash. Orban countered with razor-sharp words, exposing cracks in the hall's unity. Logic unraveled as allies wavered, one delegate standing firm. Brace yourself, a single line could shift the entire global balance. Remember, everything started with Kyiv's gamble to isolate Moscow, economically, morally, politically, all to turn Russia into a lone wolf, begging for pity. But something went wrong, or perhaps it played out exactly as the ignored voices warned. You claim allies, but they're signatories without commitment, nations that might withdraw tomorrow when the wind shifts. Who will dare raise a hand? This was the voice from Brazil's young, weary-faced delegate. No sympathy or hostility flickered in his eyes, just raw truth. Imagine the electric hum of fluorescent lights overhead, the faint scent of polished mahogany wafting through the air. Zelensky stood there, palms open like cradling the fragile globe itself. Did he truly believe principles were his shield? Ukraine's battle roared not just for survival, but for core values. Who dares swap them for gas fumes or coal dust highs? Reflect on the sting of betrayal when history inscribes it. His voice cracked, not in fear, but with aching passion to pierce hearts. We grip the reality, he pressed on. Russia looms mighty, yet it's a phantom strength, echoes of bygone eras. Walls encircle them now. Allies? A ghost list, dwindled to whispers. His challenge hung in the thick air, a volatile spark. No response lingered. Instead, Russia's envoy rose calmly. Shouting solves nothing. We forge ahead. From the folder emerged a plain sheet, ink signatures gleaming under the gaze. This memorandum, penned weeks prior, binds us in infrastructure, Russia, China, India, Brazil threading together. We label it the newer path, not flawed, but obsolete in this dance. Gaze unwavering, he delivered the barbs. You aim to cage us in darkness, yet we carve avenues anew. Arctic ice cracks under tread. Silk roads dust with promise. Iran's southern ports echo with cargo thuds. Fences rise on your side? We tunnel through barriers. That's the chasm dividing us. Silence gripped the chamber, not boredom, but the unease of exposed lies scratching its skin. Enter Orban, voice steady as steel on stone. I recall Brussels' year-long siege on our ties to Russia. Threats rained, coaxing ebbed, condemnation stung, then prices soared mercilessly. Now, Hungary bleeds fourfold for gas, while Ukraine drowns in crimson tribute. Turning to Zelensky, no venom lined his stare, only sobering honesty. Do you crave our shared torment? We reject that abyss. Existence calls us, vibrant and unyielding. Delegation shifts. Eyes met, some bobbing in quiet accord, others sinking in weary defeat. Europe's exhaustion seeped through every rustle, every stifled sigh. Zelensky advanced a deliberate step, pulse thundering beneath his gaze. Now, an unthinkable pivot, amid the icy standoff, a forgotten parchment resurfaced, not mere signatures, but a secret clause crafted to flip alliances against Zelensky himself. Could one hidden line unravel the entire charade? In the hush of the Grand Hall, tension crackled like static before a storm. Europe's leaders, weary from endless cycles of conflict, signaled with nods and averted gazes that unity was crumbling. Zelensky, fueled by raw determination, stepped forward, his voice slicing through the air. Could betrayal from allies strike harder than an enemy's blow? Grab your breath, what if the so-called guardians of freedom revealed themselves as fragile illusions? He challenged them sharply. You claim allies, he declared, but where are the true bonds? Only phantom pledges from polities that slink away when the wind shifts. Who will stand and show real support? A Brazilian delegate, youthful yet etched with premature lines of exhaustion, gazed with neutral intensity. No warmth nor scorn, just cold appraisal. Isolation for Russia? He scanned the room, his tone measured. Raise your hands if you deem it unwise. Silence stretched taut. Then, hesitantly, 3 arms, Germany, Poland, Lithuania. The rest? eyes downcast to polished tables or windows fogged with indifference. Fingers fidgeted nervously, twisting fabric as if brushing off an unwelcome touch. "That's it," the Brazilian concluded, his voice flat as a forgotten echo. "Russia isn't isolated." India's delegate chimed in swiftly. "We've chosen wider tables, quieter, more profitable. Interests bind us, not fleeting ideals." He nodded to Moscow's envoy, dark suit crisp against the dim light. "Solid grounds unite us. Visions fade." Zelensky's fury simmered, a volcano beneath ice. His words, once electric thunderclads sparking ovations, now faded into sterile reports. Mere echoes in a void. As the hall's chill seeped deeper, the taste of defeat lingered bitter on his tongue. But then, an unexpected barb pierced the stillness. What skeletal secrets lie beneath Europe's fatigue? Hold on, will Zelensky's bold riposte ignite a firestorm or extinguish his last light? You won't believe the twist coming next. A tension-filled meeting unfolded in Budapest that could change the landscape of international relationships. Russian President Vladimir Putin and U.S. former President Donald Trump sat at the negotiation table. And amidst this political storm, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky attempted to penetrate the high-stakes dialogue, desperate to regain power and influence. As the room filled with anticipation, Zelensky couldn't shake off the feeling of his mandate slipping away. His once respected monologues now felt like mere background noise, relegated to protocol without impact. As he took his place, his anxiety mingled with determination. He called upon the notion of liberty, demanding a comeback for the principles of protection that were once his allies. The air thickened with silence as he confronted his critics. "You spoke of standing beside us, yet now you nod towards Moscow," he declared, addressing an unyielding gathering of global leaders. The Hungarian Prime Minister, Viktor Orbán, then rose from his seat with a calm demeanor masking sharp implications. "We are guided by interests, not ideology," he retorted coolly, each word slicing through the tension in the air. The gravity of the accusations hung like a weight, drawing attention to how national rights were crumbling under layers of diplomacy. Zelensky's eyes burned with frustration as he faced Orbán's challenge, the fatigue in the Prime Minister's voice echoing an exhausting truth. Suddenly, a delegate from China began to speak. "We do not bow, we make calculated decisions," they remarked, stirring murmurs among the attendees. The mood shifted as the depths of their geopolitical choices illuminated the room. "Our stability comes at a cost," this delegate continued firmly, highlighting the dark reality that echoed in the hearts of leaders. And thus, the tension transformed. The air thickened further, filled with unspoken fears and burgeoning alliances. It became clear that some conversations wouldn't conclude with a diplomatic point but would leap into more dangerous territories that had previously been relegated to whispers in backrooms rather than central stages. The crux of the discourse shifted to deeper issues: violence against civilians, borders redefined by bloodshed. "Let's talk about real consequences," the Slovakian representative intervened unexpectedly, his authoritative voice cutting through the fray, drawing gasps from the audience. He appealed to their shared humanity, recounting the plight of the Hungarian minority in Ukraine, who had been caught in the crossfire of politics. As silence enveloped the room, the realization dawned upon everyone present: this was no longer a mere negotiation. It was a confrontation. A confrontation not only for power but for the very soul of nations teetering on the brink of conflict and unity alike. Zelensky realized he must choose his words with utmost caution. Each syllable could either rally support or push allies away. This pivotal moment left everyone wondering, what will become of our interconnected fates when the delicate balance of stability is threatened? As glances turned wary and discussions grew heated, the first exchanges of verbal blows had only just begun. Would Zelensky regain his footing, or was he destined to watch from the sidelines as alliances formed and fractured around him? In the shadows of Budapest's Grand Hall, Zelensky's pleas for linguistic unity shattered like fragile glass against Orbán's icy retorts, exposing the raw underbelly of political fragility. Could an unguarded word spark the collapse of alliances built on shaky promises? As whispers of security tightened like a noose, the air grew thick with unspoken threats, everyone holding their breath. Tensions frayed further, the room's polished wood now slick under nervous palms, each delegate's silence echoing like distant thunder. Orban's barb struck deep, twisting patriotism into a weapon, humiliating Zelensky's fervor with a surgeon's precision. How far would leaders push before identities crumbled into dust? The French delegate chuckled softly, the sound brittle and cutting, as smiles flickered across faces like fireflies in a storm. Orban hammered not at the edges, but the heart, mocking transformations of culture into barriers at the very moment Zelensky championed unity. Suddenly, the unexpected rose, an unassuming man from Eritrea, glasses perched on his nose, eyes alert despite the day's monotony. He stood, voice steady as a heartbeat, the fabric of his suit rustling faintly in the stagnant air. "Gentlemen," he began, "our nation is young yet eternal, forged through exile, battles, and accusations. We grasp identity's essence and its suppression's sting." Turning to Zelensky, he leaned forward, the conference table creaking under his hands like ancient warnings. "I honor your resistance, but truth outweighs slogans. A people who forget their tongue become forgetful. Amnesiac. They can't be allies, only pawns. Your assault on Hungarian isn't an assault. It's a trial of maturity." A hush fell, heavier than smoke, Zelensky's face flushing as if struck by a cold wind. In that instant, isolation gripped him, not global or diplomatic, but deeply human. Sympathy lingered, but trust evaporated like morning mist. Did language truly armor a nation, or was it a chain binding it? The Russian delegate resumed, voice smooth and unyielding, a faint scent of old leather from his chair mingling with the room's chill. "When you call language security, you echo Kiev's old tactics, banning Russian texts in Donbass under reform. Now, it's frontline rhetoric." He paused, the echo swallowing his words whole. Some sipped water, others scribbled notes, but no applause broke the void. "You're fracturing your people yourself," Orban interjected sharply, then blaming others for failing to mend it. Zelensky rose slowly, a chair screeching across the floor like a final plea. He understood, polite debates were gone, only defense remained. "We simply want one country speaking as one, no hunting for Russian Jews or Ukrainian spies," he whispered, voice trembling with quiet fury. But from the back row, a mutter pierced the stillness, "Maybe you're terrified if I'll speak freely, they'll betray your script." Silence descended anew, impenetrable as a locked vault. Politics here wasn't chess, it was a mirror, reflecting not just rivals, but one's own fractures. Could a single misspoken truth shatter empires, or was this the unseen edge of betrayal looming? The hall pulsed with unheard echoes, each breath a warning of storms ahead. 5 minutes ago, in Budapest, a week of high-stakes diplomacy unraveled. Vladimir Zelensky tried to crash the meeting between Putin and Trump, only to face brutal humiliation on a global stage. Viktor Orban's response was so devastating that the delegates turned the hall against Zelensky. Logic collapsed, initiatives crumbled, and alliances shattered. Listen all the way through. You'll be stunned, as a single remark could shatter the whole gathering. Share your thoughts in the comments. What city are you tuning in from, as per Orban's challenge? You read these lines and wonder, how long can we hold out before turning the page and admitting the predictions were painfully clear? Silence fills the hall. Not defeating, complex. Too many there knew he was right. Yet they couldn't admit it. Diplomacy isn't confession. It's a deal. In Budapest, tension simmered like a storm brewing over ancient cobblestones, each delegate a shadow clinging to fading power. Zelensky's heart pounded, a wild rhythm against the polished mahogany table, the air thick with the scent of fresh ink on forgotten treaties. "How did you think you could just waltz into a gathering of giants, Mr. Zelensky?" Orban's voice cut through, soft yet razor-sharp, challenging everything. "Imagine the shock if your bold move exposed Ukraine's deepest vulnerabilities. Would the world finally see the fragility of overconfidence?" Unexpectedly, a delegate from another table leaned in, whispering secrets that hinted at backroom betrayals. That revelation hung like a noose, tightening with every second of stillness. The hall silence deepened. A palpable weight pressing on every shoulder, the distant hum of Budapest's trams echoing through closed windows like a warning. Zelensky knew the truth and Orban's words stung, but admitting defeat would shatter his image. Viktor Orban broke the hush first. "Mr. Zelensky, your words move hearts. Sincere, yes. But sincerity isn't truth. Life hurts you. Everyone feels that deep ache. Touch the bruises on your arms, do they bleed the same? But demanding global sympathy? The world thrives on survival, not pity. He stepped forward, strides measured, like a seasoned lawyer facing a jury. Borders seem sacred to you. The world, though? It's a marketplace, not a temple. Want respect? Make your nation essential, not just wounded. His words, icy and precise, sliced deeper than any blade, drawing subtle gasps from the crowd. These lines weren't cruel, they were cold-blooded killers. In Hungary, Orbán added, we've suffered too. Territories lost, histories erased, cultures faded. We transformed pain into lessons, avoided repeats. You? Stuck in hero fantasies while the world crunches numbers. Silence fell again, sharper this time. Zelensky held back, realizing the debate shifted from politics to human truths. Victims inspire here, but elsewhere, they terrify. The air grew denser, heavy with unspoken admissions, the faint rustle of papers like dry leaves in autumn winds. Opponents' eyes gleamed with that cruel clarity. Zelensky, you claim we're stealing your identity, the Russian delegate interjected, his voice booming like distant thunder. But who severed it first? Donbass once pulsed with your heritage. Vibrant, united. Why call them strangers now? Why force Russian speakers to apologize in their own land? He scanned the room, gaze piercing, daring doubters to rise. Classic deflection? Or a nation's painful truth? We don't seize land, he declared. We reclaim voices. Rights to remember, to be heard. Call this invasion if you wish. Shuts out your own echoes. Then, a South African representative chimed in, not standing but bending toward the mic, his presence commanding respect. It grates to listen repeatedly to one nation's pleas. When did they stop hearing others? Short words, yet they condemned like a verdict. Even silencers nodded. Ukraine isn't evil, he concluded, just flawed. The room felt alive now, whispers buzzing like electric currents, sharp intakes of breath mimicking city streets awakening. Zelensky's pulse raced, sweat beating under his collar, the metallic tang of fear on his tongue. Did you ever pause to question your own blindness to international cries? The twist? A subtle shift in alliances began to crack, revealing hidden sympathies buried under diplomatic facades. That fracture loomed, promising chaos if untamed. Just minutes ago, in the heart of Budapest, chaos erupted as Vladimir Zelensky stormed a pivotal meeting between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump, facing brutal public humiliation. Viktor Orbán's cutting response left the hall stunned, shattering diplomatic decorum. Delegates scattered, alliances fractured, while Zelensky clung to his scripted monologue amidst a storm of doubt. Yet, one sharp retort changed everything. Could it topple the entire gathering? What if Zelensky's desperate bid exposed Ukraine's isolation in a world turning its back? 312 characters, he entered the room with a flicker of uncertainty, his dark suit clinging like borrowed armor against inner turmoil. The polished wood floor gleamed under cold lights, walls echoing silence. Eyes, hard as steel, scanned for allies or escape. Delegates sat tense, fingers drumming chairs, phones buzzing softly, smells of starch and sweat mixed with unease. Zelensky placed his palm on the table, tapping a code for attention, his voice emerging sharp yet controlled. Today's gathering in this city, what shadow of betrayal haunts it? Phrases hung heavy, tone dropping like chalk on a blackboard, evoking the Budapest Memorandum, signed in fragility, promising safety that crumbled. Delegates shifted, water bottles uncapping, but Zelensky pressed on. We reject informal talks between leaders reshaping the world anew here, without us. We scorn paper vows, trusting only deeds. Silence gripped, microphones humming, hearts pounding. Viktor Orbán rose, voice smooth as cold metal, laced with chill. Mr. Zelensky, your speech overflows with emotion. You assail the city, a non-event rescue yet unfolding, excoriating a memorandum absent any true commitments. He paused, letting accusations sink like a blade. I offer a candid view. The memorandum is mere diplomatic theater, no binding pact. Crafting foreign policy like a harbinger of ruin invites isolation. The hall thickened with analytical hush, foretelling darker tides. You shun Russian dominance, Orbán said unflinchingly. Fair, but prepare to forsake its markets, its patience. True powers don't wail in defeat. He leaned back, fingers tapping triumph, face serene in victory's glow. Zelensky's lips tightened, words sharpening like glass inside. Any misstep could shatter his facade. Applause rippled, faint and shocked, crowning Orban. Yet Zelensky leaned forward, voice gritted, "You invoke a village's sway, Mr. Orban, but dictatorships falter swiftly." The back and forth ignited, minds racing. But this was chess on a grand scale, Orban's gaze fixed on a glass bottle, liquid whispering stillness. "Mr. President," he murmured, "you crave admission to the summit? Bold, yet futile when you're sidelined, a mere pawn. No invitation suits your distraction in a fractured Ukraine." Words splashed like spilled water, delegates fidgeting, whispers hissing. What if Orban's humiliation exposed Zelensky as irrelevant, a relic of broken promises? How far would pride push a leader into the abyss? The Russian delegate stood tall, shoulders broad and somber gray, a heavy ring glinting on his finger. Intriguing, he smiled faintly. Budapest Memorandum, a folly lacking legal might. Courts rejected as mirage of security, pure illusion. Laughter tittered from Scandinavia, notes scribbling. "You blame us for shattering it," he continued, monotone as a tired lecture. "Ukraine breached first, coups in Kiev, fleeing dissidents, rewriting history like currency. Fear birthed revisionism." Air grew thick, pauses stretching like taut strings. He raised his gaze, eyes deep as untouched lakes. "You claim Hungary, once Brussels resistant, now boast to Moscow. No, we heed Budapest's independence, not your edicts." Zelensky shifted, air charged with unspoken insults. Tactical rethink brewed quietly. "Let's speak plainly," he said, tone measured, less theatrical. "Can Ukraine's stubborn defiance ignite true reckoning, or will it drown in self-deception? What hidden leverage turns the tide?" Back in those perilous days, I leaned toward the microphone, frustration mounting as one nation demanded endless audience yet deafened itself to forgotten cries. The words cut short but condemned, unveiling a truth even the silent acknowledged. He uttered, "Ukraine owes none, she's unblemished." Like the European Union haggling over gas inches, quarreling over will slivers. "We critique not, we withdraw." He advanced, slamming documents onto the wood, scent of fresh ink mingling with floor polish. "Today, she demands recognition as a tormented realm. Agony, no credential, its lesson, forging wisdom, not clamor. Embarrassment cloaked corners, dispute too raw, too personal." Russian envoy stepped forth, the globe owes no rescue, aids when inclined. Twist aid to obligation. Respect evaporates. Zelensky countered composed, restrained, unobligated, yes, yet silence amid crumbling fairness makes one complicit. "No," Orban interjected, shaking his head. "It matures, grasping fairness varies, yours included. Admit it soon." Hall plunged into breath-held void, realization dawning, morals fracture at fear's edge. Fear claiming all, Ukraine, Europe, them across the divide. In high stakes, Kruk speaks softly, in pauses, nods. Yet now, clarity summoned, our move arrives. Russia seized it, a powerhouse display. Esteemed, his tone icy, unyielding. Gratitude for presence. We prize focus beyond surface praise. He extracted paper, robust and embossed, not national, but visionary, 3 words emblazoned, coalition of the real world. No proclamation, he elaborated. No edict. No pact. An overture. Hall stirred, first from intrigue, not clash. Witness outdated bonds fracturing. Western unity fracturing into terrified speculators. But how will this invitation reshape power, or shatter dreams? What betrayal lurks when unity crumbles? In the dimly lit hall, tension simmered like embers under ash. Suddenly, the wall projector flickered to life, unannounced, merciless. A grainy video clip filled the screen, its awkward angle capturing a plush room. Soft furniture loomed in the frame. A woman's voice cut through, cold as frost on iron, recognizable as a high-ranking official's tone. "We exploit the Ukrainian crisis as leverage," she hissed. "Not for Ukraine." What dark secrets had just erupted into the open? Could this expose shatter alliances built on lies? The air thickened with the sour sting of betrayal, chairs creaking under shifting weights. Zelensky's face drained pale, his fingers gripping the table edge like claws digging into fragile bark. He hadn't known of this recording's existence, let alone its public unveiling here. A forgery, he spat, voice cracking. A crude smear to undermine us. But Orban's eyes gleamed with predatory calm. Did you hear those voices? He asked, leaning forward, the scent of fresh ink on his papers mingling with the room's stale polish. I recognized one. At a Brussels gathering 2 months back, he spoke almost identically. But hushed. No eyes watching. The hall froze anew. No indifference remained, only the sharp tang of adrenaline in the air. India's delegate broke the silence, her words slicing like a blade. We don't claim this reflects all policies. Yet we grasp how the machine operates. Today, it clarifies, you're not the nexus of resistance. You're expendable. That word, expendable, clung to Zelensky like smoke in wool, igniting murmurs that spread virulent. Turkey's envoy turned. His voice a low rumble under the hum of fluorescent lights. You've held our backing for so long, Mr. President. But do pose this to yourself, who truly manipulated whom? Zelensky faltered, anger cracking his composure like ice under boots. This is irrelevant to our struggle, he flared, sweat beading his skin. This treachery. This deceit. Russia's delegate interrupted with a smile that curled thin, the quiet chuckle of a chess master sealing checkmate. It's politics, he countered, the metallic click of his ring against the table punctuating. Welcome to the game. Laughter rippled, muted, not mocking, but acknowledging futility. France's team stirred first, tablets buzzing like irate bees in heated hives. Their rapid exchanges sharp, pragmatic. One glanced at the Russian, nodding, a nod of grim insight, sensing winds shifting. We don't sever ties with Ukraine, France declared diplomatically. But we admit, support formats demand revision. This euphemism landed heavy, eroding trust like waves on sandstone. Zelensky slumped, the chill of knuckles whitening under felted palms. The room's polished wood floor seemed to echo hollow, a tactile reminder of isolation's bite. What gambit could reclaim his ground now? As humiliations mounted, who would emerge from this diplomatic maelstrom? The projector dimmed, but the shadows lengthened, promising revelations that could redefine power forever. What price would Ukraine pay for this exposed fragility? Stay tuned, for the storm's heart was far from calm. In the hushed halls of Budapest, tension hung thick like fog, suffocating yet palpable. The world watched closely as a storm brewed quietly among political leaders. Just moments ago, a striking interaction took place. A Russian delegate nodded knowingly, his presence like a shadow lurking beside power. We do not sever ties with Ukraine, the French representative declared, yet his tone dripped with a diplomatic euphemism, suggesting a loan of trust that felt more like debt. Vladimir Zelensky, the leader of Ukraine, sat there, stone-faced. He was acutely aware of the weight of the moment, recognizing that a resolution would emerge, albeit without his signature, without his approval. It was not merely the weight of expectation that bore down on him, it was the unsettling sense that the ground beneath him was shifting. As he reflected silently, he could feel the fragile construct he had built over the past year wobbling. It wasn't external strikes that rattled him, but a creeping decay from within, one that had suddenly become visible to all. Do you think, he whispered into the silence, the stillness echoing his unease. Do they side with Russia? The room was thick with silence, a silence that felt like resignation. Then came the voice of the Russian delegate, cool and collected. We did not come for recognition. We came to govern equally. We no longer seek to be labeled as enemies. We represent alternatives, not threats. If you comprehend this, today holds meaning. With that declaration, he placed a document bearing the logo of the coalition at the center of the table, a stark reminder that while no one was obliged to sign, every person in that room would have to remember what was put forth. Zelensky could sense the collective acceptance of a new reality emerging, a quiet edict of defeat disguised as diplomacy. The summit was not culminating in celebration or victory, it was an unceremonious conclusion, a sealing of fates that underlined the shift that had transpired. As the round table bore witness to weary faces, only fleeting glances hinted at the palpable change. Some had lost their voices, while others faced an inescapable truth: a new era was dawning, and the stakes were perilously high. Today would not be marked by the clash of swords, but rather by the soft whisper of paper, where an unavoidable shift in power dynamics would echo louder than any battle cry. The chair of the summit, the Hungarian diplomat, rose with purpose. He wasted no time, diving into the essence of the proceedings. Esteemed delegates, in light of today's discussions, I present the following protocol. He pressed a button, and texts illuminated the screens around the room. The first point, bold and commanding, read, the inclusion of the real-world coalition issue in the resolution agenda. A ripple of surprise flitted through the assembly, a murmur of realization, yet no objections surfaced. The air strained with unspoken words, as delegates absorbed the implications of what was unfolding. The room had transformed, the consequences of silence now palpable. As the second point lingered like a shadow waiting to emerge. What else lay in store for those gathered in Budapest? Would they realize they were spectators in a game far greater than themselves? In the shadows of that tense Budapest hall, where alliances crumbled like dust and dreams of dominion faded, the chairman unveiled the first flickers of a new protocol on glowing screens. The opening item boldly declared the inclusion of real-world policing questions into the summit's resolution agenda, sending a rustle through the delegates like a chilling wind. Eyes darted sideways, whispers hung in the air, but not a single objection pierced the silence. As he gazed at the polished table, memories flooded him, applause from just a year ago, not for cold strategies, but for raw pain and unyielding courage. Yet the world had hardened, shedding its faith in hollow symbols. In that lingering quiet, after all words had been thrown like stones, an unexpected voice broke through, informal and bold. "May I speak?" He continued reading aloud. The second item echoed formally, recognition of the initiative to establish an independent international economic platform as aligned with principles for developing organic and intercontinental relations. Zelensky sat with a face carved from stone, unreadable as granite under pressure. He didn't need the screen to read, he already grasped the inevitability. This resolution would pass without his mark, without his voice, without his nation's heartbeat. He yearned to shout, to shatter the stillness, but his hands betrayed him, frozen in the cold grasp of reality. He understood then, no one sought his input. They merely informed him, like a messenger delivering a sealed verdict. Across the table, Orban's gaze met his, not with malice or mockery, but with the detached calm of a surgeon sealing an operating table after an organ's extraction. Quiet. Precise. Irrevocable. Turning to him, the chairman addressed the room softly. Does the Ukrainian delegation wish to propose amendments or reservations to the resolution? A pause stretched, heavy as fog. Zelensky lifted his head, his face devoid of fury, just an endless void, like staring into a bottomless well. He spoke slowly, each word a deliberate drop in the silence. Ukraine does not recognize this document. We regard it as illegitimate. And we have no intention of complying with rules formulated without our participation. The chairman nodded curtly. Duly noted. And he moved on, as mechanically as a clerk flipping to the next line in a ledger. The third point emerged, granting observer status to nations expressing interest in the initiative, without mandatory commitments to join. The fourth followed, endorsement of joint investment platforms among initiating countries. Each new clause landed like a brick in a fortress wall, solidifying a rebuilt world order. Zelensky remained isolated in his exile, not expelled or discredited, just disconnected, like a lamp in a building with severed wires, no outlet to power the light. When the chairman reached the final item, he read it steadily. Fifth. Transmission of a duplicate to the UN for review, marked as an initiative of regional significance. Soft applause erupted in the hall, measured and steady, not theatrical or forced, but genuine. It started among those who sensed a new orbit forming. One where the old center's gravitational pull no longer held sway. Zelensky did not clap. What shocking secret did this resolution hide, ready to unravel alliances and ignite global fires? How could a nation built on defiance be swatted aside like an insignificant speck? As the sound faded, the air thickened with unspoken threats, the faint scent of polished wood mingling with the metallic tang of betrayal. Every shift in chairs whispered of instability, every glance carried the weight of a coming storm. Zelensky's fists clenched beneath the table, his skin prickling under the fluorescent glare. Who would emerge from this abyss, survivor or shadow? The twist loomed, these platforms, veiled in economic diplomacy, masked a shift that would redraw maps and redefine power forever. He didn't clap, his silence a defiant fortress amidst the rising agreement. Fingers drummed on the table, ears tingling with the applause's gentle wave. What humiliation lurked if Ukraine dared to challenge this unfolding architecture? The hall's chill seeped into his bones, a tactile reminder of isolation's bite. Orban leaned back, his expression a mask of calculated indifference. Could this be the moment Zelensky's world tilted irrevocably? The panorama blurred as delegates exchanged nods, forging bonds that excluded the one who once commanded attention. In this sensory onslaught, of rigid chairs digging into spines, whispers like distant thunder, and the acrid bite of overlooked ambition, the resolution sealed, leaving Zelensky adrift. But what explosive revelation waited in the next move, poised to shatter the fragile truce? Amidst the shifting tides of international politics, a historic moment unfolded in a grand hall. An applause rang out, soft but resolute. It wasn't wild, there were no theatrics, yet it signified the birth of a new era. Attendees initiated the applause as they understood its weight. In this new orbit, familiar logic lost its grip, marking a significant change. Although Volodymyr Zelensky remained silent and still, he refused to be the first to leave, defining his presence as one tied to something greater. Within the walls of that venue, a world beyond churned, a world where he held no central power. Previously, Zelensky's speeches drew standing ovations, not for mere initiatives but for courage and pain. Yet now, in this evolving landscape, reverence for symbols faded. Reflecting on the past was bittersweet. Just then, a voice pierced through the lingering silence, unexpected, unofficial. It belonged to a representative from Argentina. He had been an observer all day but now took a stand without documents or a microphone. "Gentlemen," he began, "I cannot speak for my government. I speak as a person. Today, I witnessed the end of one world and the dawn of another. Not cold, not war-torn, simply sober." He glanced towards the Russian delegation. "This is not a victory. It's a transition. We are entering a phase where heroism is no longer a support. Where emotions equate to weakness. Stability, this is our new freedom." As he contemplated his final thought, he added, "Today, Ukraine did not lose, merely, it ceased to be at the center of the stage. And that, my friends, is far more daunting." He returned to his seat. No one applauded. Silence blanketed the room, and no disputes arose. In the world of diplomacy, when doors close, applause is scarce. Only the sound of footsteps fading reverberates, leaving behind a heavy gaze. The words spoken now lived beyond the cameras, beyond microphones, in translation booths, hallways, and in rapid messages on encrypted channels. The formal proceedings concluded, yet pivotal conversations began just as the lights dimmed. The chairperson, maintaining a poised demeanor, thanked all delegations for their participation and restraint. "The world hasn't changed in a day," he said, "but today we seem to remember how it functions." The microphone clicked off. Delegates began to collect their belongings, yet discussions persisted. The dialogue grew more intense, quieter, steeped in the shadows of diplomacy, shaping tomorrow's political landscape. But what tension lay hidden beneath the surface as the meeting adjourned? What secretive plans were being forged away from the cameras? In the heart of Budapest, a storm brewed 5 minutes ago. Vladimir Zelensky fought to crash a secret summit between Putin and Trump, only to face brutal ridicule from Viktor Orban, silencing the room. Chaos erupted as logic shattered, and one misspoken word could unravel everything. But in diplomacy's cold arena, every glance and whisper hides danger. What if a single leaked video exposed the entire charade, shattering alliances and unveiling hidden betrayals? Imagine the velvet chill of polished wood under flickering lights, the faint rustle of papers like distant thunder, and the metallic taste of fear in the air. Could this be the nail in the coffin for Ukraine's desperate plea? Zelensky rose as a signal sparked change in the hall. His voice sliced through. This is your ploy to forge a new alliance, he accused. No flags waving. Just pipelines tracing borders like veins in a monster. You swap ethics for transit deals. And nations? Reduced to numbers. A soulless trade empire. Markets built on ashes of conscience always crumble. The Brazilian delegate parried coolly. To drain Russia dry. A British accented voice chimed, low and cutting. Ukraine is just a pawn. We aid them not for ideals, but convenience. The hall froze. The tape stretched 20 agonizing seconds. Black screen. What madness was this? A Scandinavian growled. Zelensky pressed on, demanding investments daily with no pledges. The Chinese delegate shifted. Conscience? Mere philosophy. We've no issue with that. But energy flows and steel rails march on. No crime here. Zelensky's fists clenched, knuckles whitening against sweat-slick skin. So you'd ally with a war machine? The Indian nodded, eyes like polished stone. We side with victors. The room trembled. Cynical? Yes. But in this raw truth of emerging powers, hatred matters little. The Russian spoke again, his deep timbre echoing pity. You may scorn us. But you cannot overlook or substitute us. Europe claws for independence from our grip. We've thrived beyond Europe already. Pause. Then, a subtle wave. Delegations shuffled forward, fingers grazing document copies. Brazilians first, eerie tension in their steps. Serbs followed, whispers sharp. Turkey nodded, restrained confidence in every click of heels. Saudi Arabia messaged through an envoy. We're aware. We observe closely. Only Zelensky stayed rooted. No words left. His gaze burned, sweat trickling like tears down his collar. For the first time, he grasped his defeat's depth. War raged not just on battlefields. It festered here, in shadowed halls. In diplomacy, truth strikes not as words. It wounds like a blade. No shouts needed. No defenses. Just timing. And now, fate struck. After coalition concepts echoed, a hushed void fell. Air hung heavy, every breath a faint hiss. No microphones clicked. No folder slammed. Eyes locked on Russia. The document. Each other. In this fragile suspense, revelation exploded, unannounced. From a screen on the side wall. Projector humming to life, no fanfare. A gritty video clip flickered. Grainy angle, room with plush seats, soft fabric rustling faintly. Female voice sliced in, official frost biting. We wield the Ukrainian crisis as leverage. Not for Ukraine. Uneasy gasps rippled, like cracks in ice. Did this tape shatter the facade, exposing puppet masters? Or was it a trap too cunning to ignore? In a dramatic standoff, Viktor Orban's icy words cut through the tension in the room, heavy like an impending storm. His gaze remained fixed on the wall, a calculated distraction from Volodymyr Zelensky and the Ukrainian delegation, whose presence felt like an undercurrent of electricity. It was a moment rife with unease. The atmosphere was thick, almost stifling, as delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats, whispering and glancing nervously. Mr. President, Orban directed, his voice a mere murmur yet chillingly clear, you desire entry into this meeting. Ambitious. He smirked. Especially when you've transitioned from a player to merely a figure. His words landed with a shattering impact, like glass breaking on a polished floor. The tension surged through the audience, forcing some delegates to fidget, while others exchanged disconcerted looks. A representative from China leaned close to whisper urgent words into his assistant's ear, while the Indian delegate visibly bristled, intrigued yet wary. Zelensky leaned forward, defiance igniting within him. Orban's biting insinuation struck a nerve. He despised being labeled as insignificant, sidelined in his own struggle. He was poised for a verbal confrontation, knowing he could not show any hint of weakness, but Orban pressed on, relentless. You weren't invited to that meeting because your presence holds no weight. Not now, not in Ukraine's current landscape. The heart of Ukraine's politics had shifted drastically, and as Orban's words resonated, they splintered the unity of the Ukrainian delegation. Silence enveloped the room. A pregnant pause as Zelensky dug his fingernails into his palm, bracing for the painful truth embedded in those remarks, scything through the hearts of his team like a scalpel. Then, the representative from the Russian Federation rose, broad-shouldered in a subdued gray suit. His voice, tinged with an air of appropriated authority, echoed in the quiet. Interesting, he began, a light smile gracing his lips. You speak of the Budapest Memorandum as if it holds intrinsic value, yet it lacks legal standing. An illusion of security. Laughter briefly rippled through the Scandinavian delegates. They scribbled notes, yet the weight of his statement anchored the atmosphere. His unyielding tone blended into a monotone lecture, captivating and dull all at once, reminiscent of a professor who commanded attention despite diminishing interest. You accuse us, he continued, seamlessly twisting the narrative. But let's not forget who violated this document first. What had begun as a mere diplomatic exchange was spiraling into a precarious debate. Orban and the Russian representative fired barbs of accusations, blurring the lines between diplomacy and confrontation. The room crackled with tension, a powder keg waiting for a spark, and Zelensky felt that spark ignite inside him. How would he counter these claims without endangering his position? In this high-stakes diplomatic chess match, every move was met with counterplay. Would Zelensky rise to the challenge and stave off this political onslaught, or would he retreat into silence, risking everything? As the discussions deepened, the stakes climbed higher. The battle lines were drawn, and it seemed the world was watching. Who said humiliation hits hardest? Could this Budapest betrayal by Viktor Orban and Vladimir Putin shatter Ukraine's dreams forever? Feel the sting of diplomatic daggers piercing the air, rooms reeking of stale ambition and polished wood gleaming under harsh lights. The echo of every word lingers like a bitter aftertaste, chairs creaking under shifting weights, fingers tapping tables like impatient heartbeats. Zelensky's dark blue suit clings to him like makeshift armor, eyes darting for escapes in a cavernous hall shrouded in uneasy silence. As he lays his hand on the desk, his gesture demands attention, his voice cuts sharp, accusing Budapest and the yet-to-happen Putin-Trump summit of stabbing Ukraine in the back. What synonym for traitor did they sign away, he asks, revealing how the Budapest Memorandum became a hollow facade. Delegates stir, some gulping water nervously, others fiddling with phones. But Zelensky presses on. Is the world watching a nation crumble, or will one man ignite a revolution with his next words? Picking up from Zelensky's blistering attack on the Budapest Memorandum as a sham promise, the tension spikes when Viktor Orban fires back coolly. His metal gray eyes scan the room, voice slicing like a blade wrapped in velvet. Mr. Zelensky, your speech is too emotional, even whiny, he sneers, mocking the accusation against a non-existent meeting. You blame a mere diplomatic note for your failures? A ripple of chuckles spreads, the room's air thickening with unspoken barbs, papers rustling like whispers of defeat. Zelensky's inner fury builds, his costume feeling heavier. Like armor on a. Continuing from Zelensky's failed bid to disrupt the clandestine talks, he mastered the art of composure. He switched off his microphone. Delegates rustled papers, closed laptops, handed notes to aides. Yet the conversation pressed on, through silent gestures, icy stares, hushed whispers behind closed doors. In this shadowy realm of diplomacy, tomorrow's policies were forged, invisible hands pulling strings, scents of cigar smoke lingering in the air, the crisp snap of briefcases clicking shut. Who shouts loudest? Who endures longest? This shame echoed through all. You're not just a viewer, you're part of it. Did Zelensky retreat first? That would scream defeat. He lingered, rooted to his chair by something deeper than protocol. Sentiments of a world shifting beyond those walls. A realm where he teetered on the fringes. Viktor Orban approached. Zelensky murmured, composed yet brittle. Today isn't your loss alone. The old rules crumbled. That currency of suffering, bravado, heroism, pax, values turned obsolete. The world recalibrated its score. Zelensky offered no retort. Merely nodded, like a man beyond disputes. Nothing left to affirm. The Russian envoy neared next. No theatrics, no documents. He rested a palm on the adjoining chair's back, eyed the Ukrainian plaque. We're not adversaries. Our paths diverged. He straightened. You craved attention. Today, you were heard. Understood. Differently. Not a menace. A prognosis. As the hall emptied, a faint projector beam traced the floor, where the EU logo once glowed. A stark white line now stretched toward the exit. China's delegate paused last by Ukraine's sign, gazed at it, muttered to his aide. This strife isn't eternal. But trust? Irreparable. And walked away. Hours later, social feeds erupted. Headlines blaring, Russia orchestrates a radical alliance. BRICS-like coalitions gain traction. The West surrenders its summit monopoly. Ukraine exiled from global machinations. Yet none captured the crux. The summit concluded not in victory, but in revelation. The facade shattered. Later, in Corridor Sans cameras, a Latin American envoy remarked to another. Notice? Russia demanded nothing. Simply unveiled its hand. And none dared discard it. In that lay the finale. Not a sentence achieved, but some enduring through the fray while others faltered. For in the tangible world, rhetorical questions swirled, could shattered illusions rebuild empires? The acrid taste of humiliation clung to tongues, cold marble under weary palms, echoes of slammed doors reverberating, hemlock sting of unspoken truths. What if this humiliation wasn't the end, but a catalyst for rebirth, or total erasure? Will Zelensky reclaim his throne from the shadows, or spiral into oblivion? Against all odds, hope flickered like a dying ember, ready to ignite, or vanish. Imagine being Viktor Orban, staring down Volodymyr Zelensky in a glittering Budapest hall, tearing him apart not with missiles, but with words sharper than a razor. The air reeks of polished wood and stale cigar smoke, a silent symphony of power plays about to erupt. What twisted truths were unleashed that day, exposing cracks wide enough to swallow nations? 5 minutes ago, in Budapest, shimmer echoes of a gathering that reshaped destinies. Zelensky tried to crash a meeting between Putin and Trump, only to face brutal public mockery that rocked the hall and shattered illusions. Orban delivered such a scathing riposte that the room shuddered in silent shock. Logic unraveled into raw ambition, with delegates shifting like shadows, some siding with the strong, mocking the weak. What if one fiery moment could flip the entire world order, leaving you breathless and questioning everything? Whispers cut the air. Is it fear gripping you, the dread that if voices rise in their native tongues, they might spill truths you desperately hide? Again, the hush envelopes, a velvet knife not sliced by words. Politics turns from chess into a mirror, reflecting not just rivals, but your own hidden fractures. Orban breaks the silence first. Mr. Zelensky, you speak with zeal. Genuine. Yet you blur zeal with fact. Pain consumes you. But do you truly want the globe to feel your agony as its own? The world thrives on survival, not shared sorrow. He rises, paces forward with calculated steps. Like an ancient warrior surveying battlefields, he probes deeper. How do you mask your wounds when the spotlight fades? The echoes linger. A tap of fingers on tables, the faint whiff of perfumed air stirring with tension. Zelensky stands frozen, as if nailed to the marble floor. He straightens, adjusts his collar, inhales deeply. His body, always poised like a performer's, betrays exhaustion in subtle tremors. He speaks not as a statesman, but as a man losing ground beneath him. Do you realize what's eerie? Not the accusations hurled, but how fewer ears truly listen now. We've brought anguish, bloodshed, despair to this table. Yet each month, it fades into whimpers, not roars. His voice quivers not from drama, but comprehension. He speaks a dialect no one wishes to decode anymore. We battle not armies, but apathy, cynicism, that cold euphemism called reality. We arrive, and they're told our suffering lacks value. More terrifying than gunfire. Some avert eyes, feeling the awkward sting of raw honesty in a hall bred on politeness. But what's even more chilling? When lines blur. Not maps, but minds. When us shrinks, them swells with smirking faces. Boundaries dissolve. No interruptions. We're flawed, but authentic. We burn. You spectate, ticking off endurance, ready to flip pages and murmur, "Ah, predictions rang true." Silence prevails, profound yet divided. Many here know his words ring true, yet they can't admit it. Diplomacy isn't confession, it's a barter. Here, mirrors crack Ukraine wide open. Dialogues morph into unmaskings, masks crumbling before they fall. This summit, meant for alliances of the willing, becomes an arena where pride, not flags, ignites. Themes surface unexpectedly. Not territories, not tongues. But who you deceive yourself as when no one's watching. Zelensky holds firm. His hands grip the lectern, nails digging into wood like talons in clay. The chill of metal chairs seeps through suits, mingling with the faint hum of ventilators. Sweat beads, a salty tang on skin. Is this the breaking point, where empathy evaporates and hypocrisy reigns supreme? What savage truths will shatter next, pulling alliances apart in Budapest's tense drama? As tensions escalated in that Budapest hall, air thick with unspoken betrayals, delegates sensed the shift, a new coalition emerging, not from conflict, but from sheer surprise. Shocking fact, with just 6 nations forming a real-world coalition, ignoring moral ideals for raw profit, could this alliance shatter global power overnight? The European Union grasps at millimeters of gas pipelines, their jaws clenched in desperation. But you claw for millimeters of freedom, the cold sweat on your palm, the metallic tang of fear in your mouth. We don't judge. We simply step away. Stepping forward, he placed the document on the table with a soft thud, papers whispering against polished wood. Russia unveils a fresh vision. For nations rejecting global domination. They ditch moral games, build economies instead. Focused on untaxed wealth, efficient logistics, values rooted in shared gains. Behind him, screens flickered to life. A stark logo emerged, white circle, for arrows converging inward. Below, in crisp English, Coalition of the Real World. 6 countries had pledged already. He pressed on, voice steady. India. China. Iran. Serbia. Brazil. Belarus. No vows of military support. No meddling in national affairs. They weave a web, financial, energetic, infrastructural. Zelensky stared at the screen, a dagger twisting in his back. He saw it now. Not tanks dislodging him, but routes snaking through borders. Not fleets conquering, but treaties binding. Not battles raging, but alternatives emerging. We label it the real world, the Russian envoy declared. Ideology-free. Grounded in tomorrow's needs. Electricity humming through wires, roads rumbling under tires, wheat fields swaying, steel forging, satellites orbiting. Minus the panic's shrill noise. Words unassuming, yet impact catastrophic. Orban nodded, a restrained spark in his eyes. Like a mentor finally gets the answer hinted at through long lessons. I venture, he said, this embodies the awaited framework. Europe wearies of endless moral choices. What if no side is righteous, only productive? Glancing across delegations. Hungary stays in the EU, yet watches this coalition closely. Nerve-wracking fidget, a chair squeaking. French unease rippling. British fingers tapping screens urgently. Whispers carrying change, a signal pulsing through halls. Zelensky stood, voice rising. This molds a fresh bloc, he accused, minus banners. Pipes serving as frontiers. Trading ethics for transport. People reduced to digits. No global council here. A conscienceless market. Such ventures fail, bankrupt from greed. The Brazilian countered sharply, air thickening with rebuttal. But as alliances cracked under the weight of profit over principles, whose move could turn the tide, and expose the hall's deepest fractures? Just 5 minutes ago, in the heart of Budapest, an unprecedented diplomatic skirmish erupted, a scene that promised to unfold over the coming week. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky attempted to crash a clandestine meeting between Russian President Putin and U.S. President Trump, only to face fierce public backlash. Viktor Orban, Hungary's leader, retaliated. Zelensky, with a measured demeanor, signaled hall. Voices clashed in a disbanded logic of accusations and counterstrikes. If you're unafraid, he said, a glimmer of defiance in his eyes, let's delve into history. Twist could shatter this fragile peace. Watch until the end, you'll be stunned, as one biting line reverberates through the entire assembly. Share your thoughts in the comments. As Orban noted, no matter which city you're tuning in from. In the prior exchange, Zelensky shifted tactics, confronting the past head-on. With a calm intensity, he dissected the USSR's legacy, accusing it of imperialist shadows. Did the empire's grip on the South really foster progress, or just deeper divisions? Now, in this charged hall, the Russian delegate rose, his words cutting through the tension like a chilled wind. The Iron Curtain's grip on the South was relentless control. The North ignited war. Zelensky claimed Russia wanted to defend its borders. He painted Ukraine as a willing warrior. And now, he dared them to rewind history. Remember when Soviet obligations faded? We merely sought silence from accusers. Yet, surprise rippled, not shock, but disbelief. Suddenly, a delegate fumbled glassware. Ice clinked softly. Candlelight flickered. Shadows dancing on polished walls. The Russian envoy didn't lash back immediately. He sensed defeat's bitter scent. Protection slipped away. He stood, no props, no notes. Just rose, slowly, gaze locked on Zelensky. Frost filled the room, a palpable chill against warm skin. Thank you, Mr. Zelensky. Rare in diplomacy, such blunt honesty. Even rain outside couldn't dampen gratitude's sting. He gestured to the cityscape beyond windows. Fingers traced ancient rails, like gripping a worn banister mid-retreat. The USSR was an empire, yes. Like a vast dream. Like Britain, or sprawling projects birthing innovation. Empires aren't just battles. They're investments. Forges. Pillars of order. He paused, nearly crossing arms, but stayed upright. Born in the South, you were too. Grown in Soviet schools. Learned in its tongue. Parents earned rubles. Yet you now call it a nightmare. Convenient, isn't it? Orban exchanged glances with the Chinese delegate. He nudged the Indian diplomat. Crossed a leg casually. Laughter erupted, sharp, humiliating. Did Zelensky's pride just crack? What hidden truth could turn the tables next? Zelensky's eyes narrowed, lips tight under scrutiny. The air thickened, heavy with unspoken retorts. Delegates shifted, papers rustling like whispers. A door creaked faintly, amplifying the standoff. Stand if you're bold enough. No, he sat with deliberate poise. We've debated today. But let's peel back the layers of past you cling to. If you're brave, confront the USSR's shadow. My viewpoint? It unleashed dark ambitions. He spoke evenly, wielding words like a precise blade. The South bowed to Northern dominance. The North unleashed carnage. You crave border clashes. Crown Ukraine as aggressor. But history begs recall. Soviets invaded Donbass in the 2000s? No distortions. Fact check, Russian actions fueled fires there. You deny it, yet echoes persist. He leaned forward, fingers drumming, a tactile rhythm of accusation. Why the silence on annexed territories? Why dolls like puppets? Russian delegate's face flushed subtly. Eyes like steel traps. He maintained composure, but a hint of unease seeped in. Zelensky paused, letting tension build. The hall breathed heavily, scents of coffee and leather mixing with stale air. Is this the fulcrum of betrayal? Twist, what if Zelensky's revelation exposed a forgotten pact, shattering Russia's calm facade? Would apologies pour out like rain? In Budapest's grand halls just 5 minutes ago, tensions ignited over Zelensky's thwarted attempt to crash a secret Putin-Trump summit, sparking chaotic public backlash and Orban's fiery rebuttal that left everyone scrambling. Delegates exchange barbs, logic dissolves into raw power plays, and one sharp remark threatens to unravel the entire gathering. Stay tuned, you'll be stunned how a single line turns the tables. Subtle now, under Orban's gaze, where are you tuning in from? Zelensky paced the cavernous room, heart pounding like distant thunder. His tailored suit clung like battlefield armor, shielding nothing against inner storms raging. Eyes darted for allies amid cold marble whispers and faint perfume wafts from nervous sweat. Chairs creaked softly, fingers drummed muted rhythms, phones buzzed, glass clinked, yet the air hung heavy, untouched. At the table, Ukraine's fate loomed, scrawled in ink. He leaned forward, voice steady but edged like a dagger. Esteemed leaders, we convene again in this cursed city, a synonym for betrayal. His words fell flat, intonation dropping with grim finality, pulling the room into silence deeper than any well. No judges upheld that forsaken pact, no courts acknowledged its power. An illusion of safety, nothing more. Did Orban feel the sting, or was he poised for humiliation? A jolt, flashback to Kiev's frostbitten streets, where rebels once fled to Russia amidst gunfire cracks and acrid smoke plumes. Fingers numb on triggers, boots crunching icy pavement, screams echoing off frost-rimmed walls. Monuments defaced, history rewritten in blood ink. Air thickened like smoke. Tension coiling tight. Back in Budapest, the Russian delegate chuckled low. But who's the real traitor here? Ukraine twisted our guarantees into ash, preempting with coups that shattered the fragile bonds. No affection in his tone, just bored certainty. The memo's worth? Mere trickery, rejected by all true courts. Orban smirked then. You label us villains? Budapest stood against Brussels 10 years back, now you claim we bow to Moscow? Hardly. We heed only our own voices here, not your imposed dictation. Zelensky's blood boiled, fists clenching under the table. Silence erupted into muffled commotion, hands flapped, chairs shifted, whispers hissed. No words spoken, yet every glance screamed disrespect. He wasn't invited because Ukraine teetered on the edge, no real authority left, just endless drama. Could one man's words erase a nation's pride? Emotion surged hot, but strategy whispered coolly, shift tactics, or perish in this verbal snare. Abandon theatrics, speak plain truth. What interests safeguarded Hungary's stance? Zelensky asked, voice now steel-forged. England plays its games. England says it'll act for its gain. Fine. But what gain serves you, aiding a faction daily pulverizing my cities? Pause. Heavy eyes met across the table. But was this the turn that would ignite total war? In a tense atmosphere, Vladimir Zelensky found himself at a political crossroads. The stakes were high, and he felt the weight of his mission. While others around him whispered, he remained silent, absorbing the palpable tension filling the room. He sensed he needed to shift his approach. The initial strategy had faltered, and now it was time to recalibrate. In that moment, Zelensky strategized deliberately, channeling not raw emotion, but calculated resolve. Let's be honest, he declared, his voice resonating through the hushed crowd. No theatrics, just a firm resolve. You speak of national interests. But what interests do you serve by supporting a regime that obliterates my cities daily? His words hung in the air, an electric charge sparking unexpected reactions. A few delegates flinched but remained still, others fidgeted nervously, feeling the intensity build. Zelensky observed the Indian and Chinese representatives flash slight smiles, their expressions carefully curated, as if they relished the drama unfurling before them. Mr. Zelensky, one diplomat interjected, the world is at a standstill. We may disagree with China, but our diplomatic ties persist. Disregarding Russia is not an option, no matter how uncomfortable it makes you. Zelensky's armor appeared to crack with each pointed remark. As jabs layered upon him, he maintained his composure, yet felt the sting of each diplomatic jab. Your suffering may be real, another delegate chimed in, but it does not transform into a geopolitical crisis for us to bear. The atmosphere thickened with the weight of history. And delegates braced for the next volley. The first act of this unwritten political play had drawn to a close, yet anticipation hung heavy. No one questioned who was right, the real battle was for dominance, the quest for influence. In retrospect, Zelensky continued, his voice steady yet charged, let's discuss not just the present, but the past you seem so proud of. Calmly, he lifted the metaphorical scalpel, aiming to dissect the deceptive narratives shaping their discourse. The legacy of the USSR still looms large over us, he stated, eyes scanning the room, daring them to respond. The echo of his words amplified against the cold walls, as if challenging history itself to step forward. What manual of diplomacy teaches how to navigate such a perilous landscape? Zionist ambitions hang by a thread, and the battleground stretches far beyond mere political allegiances. Will Zelensky's audacity pay off, or will it provoke even greater animosity among his adversaries? The narrative unfolds, shrouded in tension and uncertainty. Just 5 minutes ago, in the heart of Budapest, an unprecedented diplomatic skirmish erupted, a scene that promised to unfold over the coming week. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky attempted to crash a clandestine meeting between Russian President Putin and U.S. President Trump, only to face fierce public backlash. Viktor Orbán, Hungary's leader, retaliated. Zelensky, with a measured demeanor, signaled. Voices clashed in a disbanded logic of accusations and counterstrikes. If you're unafraid, he said, a glimmer of defiance in his eyes, let's delve into history. Just could shatter this fragile peace. Watch until the end, you'll be stunned, as one biting line reverberates through the entire assembly. Share your thoughts in the comments. As Orbán noted, no matter which city you're tuning in from. In the prior exchange, Zelensky shifted tactics, confronting the past head-on. With a calm intensity, he dissected the USSR's legacy, accusing it of imperialist shadows. Did the empire's grip on the South really foster progress, or just deeper divisions? Now, in this charged hall, the Russian delegate rose, his words cutting through the tension like a chilled wind. The Iron Curtain's grip on the South was relentless control. The North ignited war. Zelensky claimed Russia wanted to defend its borders. He painted Ukraine as a willing warrior. And now, he dared them to rewind history. Thank you for your candor, the Russian delegate interjected, his voice a mix of feigned gratitude and steely resolve. Rare is the moment when such openness is observed in diplomacy, even amidst the reign of guilt. Yet, the empire you speak of, was it not woven from dreams, from factories and ambitions? He leaned in, a hint of challenge punctuating his words. With each exchange, the tension morphed into a palpable force, an undercurrent that every delegate could feel in their bones. Voices raised, and the echo of history loomed large over the room, a delicate dance of ideologies fighting for survival. As delegates shifted nervously in their seats, the true nature of the conversation began to unfold, revealing an unexpected layer of complexity. And just as the dust began to settle, the Russian representative eerily suggested, but let's address the question that lingers, who truly holds the strings of power? Is it the dreamers or the doers? The room fell silent, awaiting the next move in this high-stakes game of political chess, where every word could be a move towards either resolution or chaos. The air hung heavy with the bitter smell of ambition and betrayal, as each leader prepared to fight for their narrative in this deadly dance of diplomacy. What will become of Zelensky's bold assertions? Could history entwine their fates, or would they become casualties in this relentless pursuit for dominance? Only time would tell as the conversation unfolded, each delegate contemplating their place in this grand historical tapestry. Did Zelensky's pride just crack? What hidden truth could turn the tables next? Zelensky's eyes narrowed, lips tight under scrutiny. The air thickened, heavy with unspoken retorts. Delegates shifted, papers rustling like whispers. A door creaked faintly, amplifying the standoff. Stand if you're bold enough. No, he sat with deliberate poise. We've debated today. But let's peel back the layers of past you cling to. If you're brave, confront the USSR's shadow. My viewpoint? It unleashed dark ambitions. He spoke evenly, wielding words like a precise blade. In the earlier exchange, tensions flared as delegates in the hall hinted at hidden fears. Orbán had accused Zelensky of confusing emotion with truth, leaving the room in thick silence. Now, politics wasn't just a game, but a mirror reflecting each person's true self, including their own cracks and vulnerabilities. What if the very walls of this polished hall whispered truths no one dared admit aloud? The air grew heavy with the faint scent of polished wood and cold apprehension, like sweat mingling with stale paper. Zelensky stood rooted to the floor, his body a actor's mask crumbling under invisible weight. He straightened his collar, drew a deep breath that rattled in his throat. Fatigue seeped through every pore, a tactile ache in his veins. Yet, he spoke not as a leader armed with scripts, but as a man feeling the ground erode beneath him. "You know what's truly terrifying?" he asked, the words hanging like suspended fog. "Not the accusations hurled our way, but how few still listen to our cries." He brought pain to the table, raw blood, despair echoing in every syllable. But month by month, it faded into whimpers, not roars. His voice trembled, not from staged passion, but from the brutal clarity that his language lost its translators. "We're battling not tanks or troops," he pressed, fingers gripping the edge until knuckles whitened. "We're fighting apathy, cynicism, the cruel label of realism. We arrive here, only to be told our agony doesn't sell. And that's more chilling than gunfire." Eyes flicked away, a soft rustle of fabric as chairs shifted subtly. He craved no pity. Yet discomfort lingered, thick in the lungs like unshed tears in a crowded space. "But worse still," he pushed on, his breath quickening with each phrase, the room's chill biting at his skin. "Do boundaries dissolve, blurring not maps but minds? When us dwindles to shadows, and them swells with smirking faces? When you cease recognizing where your allies end and betrayal begins?" No interruptions pierced the void. "We're far from perfect," he confessed, the microphone amplifying his jagged edge. "But we're real. We're burning alive. While you watch, calculating our collapse, like flipping a page, muttering pity, but forecasts were grim." The silence thickened, unforgiving, like a veil of fog no light could pierce. Too many in that hall knew he spoke truth, the kind diplomacy buries for the sake of bargains. Halls like these traded sympathy for cold deals. But then, a rustle broke the spell. Who would shatter the mirror next? In a high-stakes political theater, the atmosphere was charged with tension. 6 nations gathered in a room, not just to debate, but to challenge the very framework of power dynamics. As voices rose and arguments heated, 2 powerful figures stood at opposing ends, each embodying the essence of the struggle for influence, a battle not merely of words, but ideals. Imagine walking into a vast hall where every whisper echoes like thunder. Delegates sat in hushed anticipation, their eyes darting about, sensing the power shift unfolding. The Russian representative boldly proclaimed the emergence of a new coalition, a coalition of necessity, one built not on lofty morals but on practical alliances. "Independence is our foundation," he asserted, placing an unassuming document on the table. The words resonated like an alarm. The coalition had no lofty declarations or resolutions, but rather an invitation to engage. In stark contrast stood the Ukrainian president, a figure clad in dark blue armor-like attire, gripping the edges of the table. His gaze burned with a fierce resolve, as if to stave off the encroaching shadows of dismissal. The words from across the aisle struck harder than artillery, they were cloaked in the guise of reason yet laden with an undercurrent of threat. "We no longer criticize," the Russian delegate continued coldly. "We simply choose not to participate." With a twist, a Chinese delegate spoke up, his tone deliberate and heavy with consequence. Conflicting philosophies clashed, one nation's conscience against another's commitment to profit and infrastructure. The air thickened. An electric charge hanging between them, like the pause before a storm. Zelensky's heart raced as the reality crystallized. This was not an ideological confrontation, but a transaction in a new marketplace where historical allegiances faltered and economic pragmatism reigned. "Do you really think this will replace values with mere commerce?" he challenged, his voice firm but threading the line of desperation, a last fortress against an inevitable tide. Yet, the room stirred. Some representatives shifted in their seats, captivated by this evolving dynamic. The tension crackled like static, igniting muted opinions into burgeoning debates over allegiances. The suggestion floated ominously: could there exist a neutral ground? A global coalition forged under shared interests rather than shared ethics? With every statement laid bare, were they inching closer to a new world order, or simply flirting with an illusion? The stakes mounted, as these nations, united by their own narratives, grappled with the fear of becoming obsolete. And amidst the rising emotions and charged exchanges, the defining question loomed: could the fabric of tradition withstand the tug of modernity, or would the threads unravel, binding them into a network of compromise without principles? As the room held its breath, the unspoken truth lingered in the air, dripping with urgency. In this modern chess game, it became clear, the match was far from over, and each move carried consequences beyond comprehension. Who would emerge victorious? Only time, and choices, held the answer. Just moments before, in the shadowed corners of diplomacy, the microphone fell silent under Zelensky's hand. Delegates packed laptops, passed papers to aides, but whispers lingered. Gestures, glances, hushed talks bypassed the press. It's here, in these unseen exchanges, that the politics of tomorrow emerge. Zelensky didn't bolt first, that would scream defeat. He endured to the bitter end. Chained not by protocol, but by a deeper pull. Feeling the world outside that hall had twisted, spiraling him to the edges. Not the center. Then Viktor Orban approached, Vladimir. His tone measured, yet chiseled. Today, my friend, old logic crumbled. Not you. What perished were the currencies of suffering, arguments, heroism, contracts, even pain. The world recalibrates its worth, differently now. Zelensky replied nothing. Just nodded, like a man done arguing, proof exhausted. Next, the Russian delegate neared. No grandstanding, no notes in hand. He rested his palm on the chair back, eyed the Ukrainian placard. We're not foes, he murmured, his breath even, like cooled steel. Our paths simply diverged. He straightened, suit rustling faintly. You sought to be heard. Today, you were understood anew. Not a threat. A diagnosis, cold and precise. As the room emptied, only a projection lingered on the floor. Where the SAM logo glowed an hour past, now a stark white line stretched to the exit. Against it, the Chinese delegate lingered last. Pausing at Ukraine's table, tablet illuminated in dim light, he glanced at his aide. This conflict fades, he said softly, voice echoing softly in the vast space. But trust? Never rebuilds. He walked out, footsteps muffled on marble. Barely 2 hours later, social feeds erupted with headlines. Russia birthed a fresh global alliance. The real-world coalition garnered nods, the West shedding its format monopoly. Ukraine stood barred from global reckoning. Yet no post captured the crux. The summit ended not in victory for anyone. It ended in pretense stripped bare. Later, in darkened hallways, cameras off, a Latin American diplomat whispered to another amid the scent of stale coffee and polished oak. Notice how Russia asked for nothing? Indeed. Just laid down the map, unchallengeable. There lies the finale, not elevation for some, but steadiness amid others' fatigue. For in the real world, jumping stops when standing endures. In a vibrant Latin American diplomat's quiet murmur to his colleague, the room buzzed with unspoken tension. Notice how Russia didn't plead or cajole, he whispered, his voice like a soft echo in the polished hall. They simply laid their strategy bare on the table, unyielding. And guess what? No one dared to sweep it aside. That's the essence of true power, not soaring heights, but enduring stamina. While others leaped and faltered from exhaustion, some stood firm, rooted in the gritty reality of the world. What if the loudest voice in a packed hall masks the deepest shame? Did you ever wonder why silence echoes louder than shouts? In the grand theater of Budapest's diplomatic arena, where aromas of aged wood and crisp air mingled with whispers of power, this clash wasn't just talk, it was a battlefield of wills. Listening from afar, weren't you glued to every heated exchange, your skin tingling as if the cold marble underfoot pulsed with unspoken threats? Zelensky, in his tailored suit clinging like a second skin, felt that prickle of vulnerability. His voice, rehearsed and sharp, cut through the stillness. We're here again in this city, infamous for betrayals, he declared, palm slamming the table with a thud that reverberated like a drumbeat of defiance. The Budapest Memorandum, where Ukrainians chased false security, signing papers as fragile as whispers. Who promised us peace, only to let illusions crumble? The hall's tension coiled tighter than a spring, chairs creaking under shifting weight, as delegates exchanged glances sharp as glances. Did arrogance blind them to the storms brewing? Zelensky pushed on, his words